Hi everybody. Perhaps a little bit of a strange thing to do on a Sunday afternoon, but this is when I happen to have a little bit of time to do the video that I promised some of you I would do. It might seem a strange place to be doing this video in my bathroom, but what I'm about to share with you regarding my use of yoga in my recovery process, the bathroom ended up being the best place for me. There were places where I could lift up and get a grip. There were things that I could balance on. And so this is where I ended up doing a lot of my exercises. For those of you who don't know, about 1.5 years ago, I fell in the backyard and broke my femur completely into right at the ball of my hip. They discovered that on the other femur I had an impending fraction. And so I had 2 surgeries in 3 days' time, and they put rods from my hips to my knees. It was an extremely difficult process and very discouraging because I've exercised my entire adult life and thought that I was in pretty good shape. And so it was a disheartening experience for me. But as soon as it happened, I had one goal. And that was to recover as fully as possible, as quickly as possible. And one of the things that I discovered very early on in the hospital was that it was because of years of exercise that I was able to regroup and recover as quickly as I did. My doctors have said that it was much quicker than virtually all of their clients. So I just thought that I would share with you the first thing I did on my own after physical therapy to get me moving forward. Physical therapy is hard and absolutely imperative to get going on that recovery process, but that comes to an end. And then it's a question of what are you going to do? I will tell you that I continued with resistance bands after the therapy was finished. And also I obviously walked and did things like that. And while I know that there are things I will never do again, such as jogging, nevertheless, the one thing that I really wanted to get back to, because it is just such an overall healthy feeling for me afterwards, is a good yoga routine. And also, yoga had helped me. I've done yoga for decades, and it's just helped me keep my flexibility. So today what I want to do in this video, and I'm hoping to keep it relatively short, I'm not going to go through the entire sequence as in doing it for each pose for the full time, just going to show you the poses so that then you can do them at home. A couple of disclaimers. One is, obviously this is something personal that I did, and I'm sharing it with those of you who've said you'd like to know more about it. But you should never do anything like this, especially after recovery, without your doctor being fully aware of what you're doing. And I did have doctor's permission. She had said no yoga. And then when she was introduced to chair yoga, that's when she suggested that I try chair yoga until I could move back into my regular yoga practice. But you should check with your physician first. Also, I'm not a professional yoga instructor, not by any means. And the reason I put this routine together is because I couldn't find a yoga recovery or yoga chair program anywhere around me. And so it became necessary for me to do it for myself. So with those disclaimers in place, what I did was I came up with my own yoga routine. I basically took practice that I've done fairly frequently over the last few years, 5 or 6 years. This has been similar to my routine. So I took what was very similar to my routine, watched quite a few chair yoga videos, and then kind of developed my own plan, and then developed the poses so that they helped me in my recovery process. I purchased 3 things. I did purchase a yoga chair. There's really 2 differences in this chair. One, it doesn't have a back, and so it does make you, while it gives you some support, it does make you sit up. You can't just lean back, you have to sit up. And it also has a little bit, now really not much difference, but it does have a little bit of a wider base at the bottom to give you some stability. I will tell you that because I really like being outside, I did take my chair outside after I'd been doing this for a few weeks and did my yoga routine outside, and the chair was very stable out in the grass. The other two things that I had not used before but became very necessary for me during recovery was a block and a strap. I used a strap probably for a good 7 to 8 months after I got back. I was doing my chair yoga routine. I was not able to go back to a regular yoga routine until 6 months after surgery. And even then, I was still using the strap. So you may want to make an investment into some of these. So my routine. I start out with a sun salutation, which is very similar to exactly what you would do if you were in a yoga studio, except you're seated. Hello, Francis. And yes, Francis did join me on many of my yoga routines. So you're probably going to see him from time to time in the video. Actually, there's some videos out there shows how you can do yoga with your pets. Haven't gotten to that point yet, but I do let him come in here with me. Then I did a chair version of cat-cow. Cat. And I would just do that as many times as I felt I needed to limber up. When you're in recovery, and if you're really stiff, especially after getting out of bed, it is really hard to just stretch and get comfortable. And so that was one of the things that I instituted into this routine to just help me loosen up. And then neck stretches. I tend to do my neck stretches with a real rigidness, I guess I would say. My arm very stiff, stretching it out as far as I can. Bend my neck, roll to the side, put my hand over my ear, stretching as much as I can, and then I turn my head to my armpit and stretch that way. And then of course you do the other side. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Hello, Francis. Yes, you like to do your yoga too, don't you? So the neck stretches. Then we come to some of the twists. Twists are really different in recovery process. My physician asked me to be very careful not to overdo it because we weren't quite sure the state of my fractures. So here is a seated spine twist. Cross my leg, make my arm like a kickstand at the back, put my hand here and twist. And then of course, again, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other side. One thing you can do with this final twist, if you like, is do a reverse twist. So if you want to add this to your routine, you're like this, and then you just simply reverse it. And that was great for me for getting a lot of the kinks out after having my body so tied up in knots after surgery. And then here's the first time I used the belt. The leg lifts were obviously something that were very important, and getting that not only that mobility, but getting that flexibility back was very important for me. I started out doing one leg at a time. I moved all the way back to my chair so that lifting my leg was at least relatively easy. And then looping the belt, and then just grasping it, and as far as I could go. When I was in yoga at that time before the accident, I could be flat on the floor, both legs in front, and could lean down. But obviously, right after surgery, you can't do very much, which is why a belt is great because it helps you eventually stretch out. And then, of course, you do it to the other leg, helping you bend down. And then I went on and eventually moved to doing it to both legs. It required some strength to get both legs up, and then that also gives you a completely different stretch in the hips. So that is the leg stretches with a belt. Downward and upward facing dog. You know, that's a favorite yoga pose. People really like it because it just, I don't know, it just helps you get some kinks out, makes your body feel limber, feel good. I especially like up dog. It was hard to try to figure out how to do these in such a way. Balance was a huge issue for me, and so staying balanced was very, very difficult. Be sure you've got your chair placed solid. That's really important. Put your hands solidly on the back of your chair. Move back as far as you care to. At first, I could only move a little bit because I would lose balance. But as you get better, you can move farther back. And then it's the same as you would do on the floor, but you're just doing it on the back of a chair, downward facing dog. It's a great stretch. Really helps the hips too. And then for up dog, I did the same thing as I would with a regular up dog, but held gently and let my hips come forward as I raised my chest. So down dog and up dog. As far as timing on your yoga exercises, you know, eventually when you've been doing yoga a really long time, you can hold a pose for a couple or 3 minutes. You will find that fatigue sets in very quickly when you're in a recovery process. And so I could not hold my poses in the beginning more than 15 seconds. And eventually worked my way up to 30 and then tried to get to a point before I went back to my regular yoga practice, tried to get up to holding my poses at least for 1 minute. So that's something to work forward to. Forward fold, that's just one of my favorite exercises because I just feel like it releases my back and my hips. But obviously balance is a huge issue. But you kind of go about it the same way. Pigeon toe your feet, spread them apart, put the chair where you can get balance, and then you just fold as far as you feel like you can. Now, obviously, at first, this was not very much. I couldn't do much more than this, if that much. And you know, eventually, now that I'm back in my yoga practice, I can go all the way to the floor. But yeah, you just go as far as you can, keeping your balance by holding on. And then using the chair to help yourself raise back up. So then we do the seated side angles. Now these are like your warriors and your things like that. There's 2 or 3 that you can do. This, you do need to be a little bit careful. Be sure that you have a good solid base on your chair. You put one leg over your chair, okay? So you have the same, I need to get a little bit more space here. So you have the same exact posture, pose, if you will, that as you would have if you were doing this in a yoga studio. Okay, your leg is forward. You can do it like this, okay? I found that very difficult in the beginning. My hips did not want to move that way, so I kept them more straight. You just have to kind of figure out what you can do. And then your arm movements are the same. You can do warrior. You can do side angle. And you can do the side bend. And you can even, if you're up for it, there you go, do a bind. You should always come out slowly the way you came in. And of course, as always, what you do on one side, you do on the other. I would stay seated on my chair, put my leg over, Put the other leg back. So there you go. And those are the side bends that you can do. Pigeon. A lot of people like pigeon. Pigeon is not easy even when you're doing it on the in the yoga studio on the floor. That I'm still not back to where I was. It's been a year and a half, and I don't know that I'll ever get that complete flexibility back. But basically the way I adapted it for the chair was to put my knee on the chair and to put my other foot back. Now if you're doing real pigeon in the studio, you're laying completely flat, you're completely flat down on your leg, and you know, that's just not possible. But you want to be sure that you've got your hip and your leg on your chair so that you're completely stable. And when you're really stiff, when you're in recovery, it's not easy to come out of pigeon. And so I gave myself plenty of support by holding on to my chair. And then of course, just the same thing for the other side. And this is the leg that I broke, so you can see that even now, it's harder for me to do this. All right. Some things that I added in a little bit with the block were some knee lifts. I always do a set of abs when I'm working out. I had trouble figuring out how to do that without getting completely down on the floor, and so this was my adaptation. Just holding the block between your legs and lifting. Another thing I did that I added to my workout, I usually will do, not many because I'm not that strong, but I would do some push-ups. And obviously that wasn't going to happen. You couldn't get on the ground and couldn't move my legs like that. And so bracing my legs, I did wall push-ups. And then I did some chair triceps. Just using my chair, being sure that it was stable, not doing it, not putting my feet out too far. I did not want it to be too much for me. And just triceps up and down. Eventually, after I did that, I did move to doing some stair triceps and moving my legs out a little bit farther. I also have an exercise ball, and when my balance was better, I moved to doing bridge with the ball and to doing leg lifts with the ball. So let me show you what that looked like. I would just sit with the ball, put my feet on either side, and lift. So let me look at my list here. When I could get down on the floor, I did do swimmies, where you lay on your stomach and you just play like you're swimming. And I did do some Superman, where I would lay out flat. It took me a long time before I could get down on the floor and get back up. And this was one reason I came into the bedroom, because I had this right here. And I could put my yoga mat down. I'll just lay it out here real quick. And once I was down, I could climb here and push and get myself back up. So in many ways, I was just completely rebuilding muscles rebuilding flexibility, rebuilding stamina, and regaining my flexibility. I won't say that this will work for everybody, but I will say that between that, walking, and resistance bands, I'm a year and a half later, and with the exception of jogging and with the exception of some flexibility, I'm pretty much back exactly to where I was. Recovery is not easy. It takes a lot of determination. But I think that for me, it was important for me to do this so that I can go into my 60s feeling good and feeling healthy and feeling strong. And I hope that this video helps you.